webinar series, a monthly webinar designed to provide information and speakers related to the workforce in Alabama. Past webinars are available on the AlabamaWorks website at alabamaworks.com. And now your host, Tim McCartney, Chair of the Alabama Workforce Council. Good morning and welcome to the Alabama Works webinar series, a monthly
Good morning. Welcome to our March 2021 Alabama Workforce Council monthly webinar. I want to discuss two topics before we get started today. First, early this morning, I received an email from our AWC member and friend, Mr. Cleve Poole. As many of you may or may not know, when Cleve is not performing work for the Pioneer Electric Co-op or for the AWC, he plays in a cover band at numerous gigs throughout the state. Well, on Friday night, while playing in Birmingham, Cleve experienced some severe pain and then collapsed on stage. Turns out that he had an aortic aneurysm. He was rushed to the hospital where the doctors told his family that he had a 1% chance of recovery. Then they performed open heart surgery on Cleve and did a miraculous job, because today Cleve's doing much better and is on the road to recovery. So please keep Cleve in your hearts and prayers for a speedy recovery. On another note, I would be remiss if I failed to acknowledge that we're now 1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic, which all crossed into the consciousness of many Alabamians back in March, or actually March 11th of 2020, when Tom Hanks tested positive for COVID-19. President Trump announced a European travel ban. The NBA suspended its season. The SEC basketball tournament was canceled, as well as the Final Four. So a lot has happened in the past year. It seems almost impossible to remember everything that's happened since then. One thing that has happened in the past year that I'm very proud of is the camaraderie that we've all developed as a workforce community during the immediate COVID-19 response and during the present recovery phase. I want to thank each and every one of you for your continued perseverance and cooperation. Together, we're going to make a good thing happen as a result of this pandemic. Now, we have a great lineup for you today, so let's get started. This morning, we're going to hear from Mr. Dean Mitchell of Southeast Alabama Works about the steps that can be taken to prevent unemployment insurance fraud. Next, Mr. Cody Easley of the Alabama Supercomputer Authority is going to give us a preview of the Alabama Skills-Based Job Description Generator and Employer Portal, which is going to make it easier for employers to develop job descriptions based on specific skills that they need. Following Cody, Mrs. Tammy Wilkinson of the Workforce Development Director of the Alabama Department of Commerce, and Mr. Fee Friend, who's the coordinator of the governor's local workforce boards, will give us an update on the WIOA policy changes that are designed to ease future funding shortfalls. And finally, to wrap up today, this meeting today, is Nick Moore will give us our monthly workforce update. So at this time, I'd like to get started with Mr. Dean Mitchell, who's going to provide the business perspective on preventing unemployment insurance compensation fraud. Dean, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to share some concerns from the business community in Dothan and the Wiregrass as it relates to the challenges of the public workforce system, specifically the unemployment system. First, let me take a moment to acknowledge the unprecedented challenges that both our businesses and the Alabama Department of Labor have faced over the past year. Both have been overwhelmed with changes in regulations, changes in standard normal operating practices, and the ability to both keep folks working and the processing of hundreds of thousands of claims. It has not been an easy road for anyone. Like you, Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I did not thank businesses all across Alabama for being flexible, nimble, and creative to adapt to the pandemic. Likewise, Secretary Washington and the ADOL team have worked tirelessly to meet the needs of the unemployed and always working with the business community to help them find employees. As everyone knows, there have been lots of unemployment claims that are being fraudulently filed under someone else's identity. Over the past few months, I've heard from many local businesses about this challenge and some key questions have arisen. I'd like to share those questions with the group this morning. And while there may not be time to address all these challenges, I hope this dialogue can continue as we all work toward finding solutions. So let's get to it. Question number one. When an illegal unemployment claim is filed, the perpetrators are utilizing stolen personal information. That is somebody's social security name, social security number, their name, addresses, etc. How is that being accomplished? Is it on us as individuals to protect our personal information? Or are business systems and business networks being compromised? Do businesses need to conduct cybersecurity audits to see if they have any data breach points? Question number two. Secretary Washington has been very responsive to my questions about the process for businesses to report these fraudulent claims, and I greatly appreciate that. I have had some businesses follow up and ask if, one, would a state hotline be an easier or more effective way for employers to report these claims? Two, is there any possibility of businesses placing a possible fraud hold on the payment of these fraudulent benefits? And then three, are there any further steps that businesses could possibly do to help mitigate these issues? Question number three. Local businesses I have talked to clearly understand the enormous challenges the pandemic has created for ADOL when it comes to unemployment and both the legitimate filings of those that were displaced and the increase in false claims. However, they have asked, one, is there anything that the state can do to build in more protections against fraudulent claims at the source of applying for benefits? Two, what is being done to punish those that are filing these illegal claims? Mr. Chairman, thank you again for the opportunity to share these business concerns. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you on this important issue. And Mr. Chairman, let me just also add, when I've had these issues pop up locally here in Dothan, I have been able to work with our local Dothan Career Center, and have been super, super helpful, and I want to thank them. But as everybody knows, this is a very serious issue that's costing businesses time, that's costing our state money, and so I continue to get these questions. I know some of these answers may not be able to be flushed out today, but I think it is important that we put these questions on the table because businesses, you know, they have a right to be concerned on how the taxpayer dollars are being spent, how this is affecting their time, their livelihood. And it's not just inherent to the state of Alabama. We know this is a nationwide problem with billions and billions of dollars being unauthorized spent. So I hope that we can all work together and try to find some common sense solutions to what is truly a nationwide problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Dean, for bringing those questions up. I know many employers across the state have the same questions. Unfortunately, Secretary Washington is not going to be able to be with us today, or he had a conflict come up and we didn't know until yesterday evening late. So, but I know he'll be happy to get some answers for us. And I think what we can do is post them on the AlabamaWorks website. Secretary Washington is also going to have a PowerPoint that we're going to post today on AlabamaWorks. So, but we will get some answers for that and address those either on the website itself or in a future webinar. So thanks again for your counsel and your questions, and we will work on those answers. So at this time, I want to ask Cody Easley of the Alabama Supercomputer Authority to give us a preview of the Alabama Skills-Based Job Description Generator and the Employer Portal. Cody, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as we said, we're going to give you a preview of what the Skills-Based Job Description Generator and Employer Portal is going to be doing. So just as a high-level overview for anybody who's not already familiar with it, this portal is intended to connect employers to the Alabama Credential Registry and the Alabama Competency Taxonomy with the purpose of allowing employers to easily create customized skills-based job descriptions that are predicated on the competency models aligned to the in-demand occupations identified by the Committee on Credentialing and Career Pathways, or the ACCCP. In order to save their work and be able to reuse these job descriptions, the employers will be able to create a profile that's linked to their Alabama College and Career Exploration Tool, or asset profile. This portal will be linked to the student-based learning and employment record as well in the long run. This will allow employers to locate or fence a candidate pool of job seekers who possess the competencies and credentials aligned to their skills-based job descriptions. So this will really help employers find people in their area that that best fit their job needs. In addition, from the opposite angle, the job seekers will be able to respond to those skills-based job descriptions posted on the Asset Jobs portal. So a quick status on where we're at. The Alabama Competency Taxonomy data is available for use. The Asset Profile System and the Alabama Credential Registry are both under development, along with the Skills-Based Job Description Generator and Employer Portal, which is also under development. But now I'm going to show you some samples of how the system could look and function. I'm going to, as the technical implementation and the requirement gathering proceeds, we are still in a fluid state of work, so this is not how the system will look in its final state. And I will also say that we are looking at an alternate, more graphic system as a possibility. So when an employer comes into the system, they're going to be able to choose from a job sector and a title. And then that's going to pre-populate the system with the default competencies for each of the tiers that are displayed. And the employer will be able to navigate through each of those tiers, seeing where they're at in the process and seeing what skills or competencies are already in the system automatically. For any of those competencies that they're a little uncertain about the meaning of, they'll be able to see additional details showing what the skills making up that competency are in more detail. In addition, the employer will be able to remove or replace competencies as they go throughout the system, making sure that they can customize the job description to their exact needs for their business. In addition to being able to replace or remove competencies within each tier, employers will also be able to add their own competencies. First of all, they'll be able to select from a much larger existing competency bank. And then if that's not sufficient, in order for them to customize the job exactly to what they need, they'll also be able to enter a manual custom competency. And then finally, the employer can save their job description for future reference and changes. They can use that job description in the Assets job portal, copy the description into other job portals, or download it as a PDF. All right. And Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Cody. Appreciate that. And, we all got still a lot to learn about that, but appreciate your insights and the help that Supercomputer Authority is doing on this project. Now I want to ask that Tammy Wilkerson and Fee Friend to give us an update on the WIOA policies designed to help alleviate and to the greatest extent possible future short-term funding shortfalls. Tammy and Fee, y'all are up.
Hey, good morning. I'm going to turn it over to Fee Friend for him to go through the policy changes. And if you have any questions, then, we can answer those hopefully at the end. Fee?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. These are just a couple WIOA policy changes that are in the works. They're designed at improving performance for WIOA and serving more individuals and shortening the time between training to employment. First, I'll start with some changes to the eligible training provider list. Beginning this the upcoming program year, July 1, the application period will be reduced to 4 months, a period of time between July through October. This period of time will be available for any new programs to get added, as well as making any changes to the remaining 8 months of the year will be used for doing any maintenance and reviewing of the current programs to make sure they're in compliance, doing what they should be doing. Training programs will be required to be high demand, high wage jobs, or elite high demand, high wage jobs, and result in industry recognized stackable credentials. Some other changes include that all applications will be required to be done online. Providers must be in business for at least 18 months and have served individuals successfully for a period of at least 12 months. Credentials must meet the WIOA credential policy and should be given to participants as they receive them, not at the end of their training. We're going to really strongly encourage short-term training, and costs will be broken down by tuition and fees. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Tammy, on the ETPL?
No, I think that's good. We are trying to align all of these programs to the ACCCP and all of the work that they have done. And so we're trying to make it more consistent and streamlined so that it's consistent across all the programs, especially with the in-demand occupations set out by the ACCCP. Thanks, Fee.
Okay, moving on to the individual training accounts, which are our scholarships for 2-year programs. Beginning in July 1, participants will be funded under ITAs for a period of 1 year at a time, one program year at a time. That would cover the fall semester, spring semester, and summer semester. ITAs will be funded using career pathways. For instance, someone that was a medical assistant, their ITA pathway would be to the LPN first and then to the RN instead of just going from medical assistant to RN. ITA cost categories for the 5 local areas that I work with: North Alabama, East Alabama, West Alabama, Central Alabama, and Southeast Alabama will be making a change from the payments will be based on the hours of training, not the weeks of training. In the past, it's been the weeks of training, so a program that could be extended out over a period of time, but the training hours still might be low. So we're making that change so the payments will be based on how many hours of training are required to complete that program. And for any adults or youth that enter into ITAs, they will now be required to complete Ready to Work before they can enroll into the ITA. One more big policy change under ITAs will be for 2-year programs, we will pay for the last 4 semesters of a 6-semester program. Participants will now be required to use Pell funding or another form of funding for the first 2 semesters of the 2-year program. In addition, WIOA ITAs will cover just the tuition and fees of a program if it's Pell eligible. If it's Pell eligible, the Pell grants will be required to cover the books, supplies, and tools for those programs. Is there anything you would add to that, Tammy?
No, I think that's a good start. We are going to look more closely at Pell, once we have this first year of, Pell paying the tools and supplies and books for the Pell eligible programs. We know some of the short-term programs are not Pell eligible, so WIOA would cover all of those. So we're going to look at it after this first year, and if we need to make some more changes, then we will at that time. Thanks.
Okay, one last thing that I wanted to mention that is a policy change is related to occupational skills training, the standalone occupational skills programs that have been offered in the 5 local areas that I coordinate. Beginning immediately, all standalone occupational skills programs will be funded for only 1 year total. Towards the end of that year of operation, we will ask those providers to try to apply for those programs to go on the eligible training provider list. Since to be on the ETPL, they have to be in operation for a year. We're going to provide the funding to do the occupational skills training for a year. And once they have that participant data, they can submit it and transition it to the ETPL where they would be eligible as an ITA. And if Tammy has something to add to that, she can. Otherwise, I'm open for questions, or we're open for questions.
Oh, we're all good. Thank you, Fee.
Thank you.
Dean or Nick, do y'all have any questions? I don't think we have a ability to get questions from the audience.
I think one thing we may want to do is just develop a FAQ document, and we'll curate some questions that are coming in through the regions, and then we can just put that out in the next couple of days or weeks. People want to know about the Pell and about the ITAs going to a year, and then so several questions about the difference between what's Pell eligible and not on the short-term stuff. So we may just want to ask some of those in writing, and we can put it sort of FAQ document out there. But I think you generally covered the 4 corners of what most people were thinking about.
Also, Nick, I'm not the expert on this, but it's my understanding that there were no additional dollars put in the new stimulus bill. So there's not any extra money coming from that. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the most people ever file for unemployment in the history of the country in the past year, and one of the biggest pieces of legislation that have ever passed Congress. I don't know, it could be the biggest if you take away wars and that kind of thing, and not a single dollar for WIOA, not a single dollar.
Oh, that's unfortunate. So thanks, Tammy and Fee, for bringing us those updates. We'll work on that FAQ page and get the answers back. So the people listening to this webinar will have a way to go to AlabamaWorks and get those questions answered. And now to wrap up our meeting for today, we're going to hear from Nick Moore, who's going to give us our monthly workforce update. Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my internet froze up, which is unfortunate right when you turned to me. So apologize for that. That's what happens down here in the basement of the Capitol. So we're doing all this work on broadband. That's embarrassing when your internet freezes up in the Capitol. So let me share my screen real quick. Okay. So I'm going to keep it fairly brief this month. We thought we were going to have a lot more presenters than we ended up having, so I did not prepare to say a whole lot, but I'm going to cover the high points of what has happened. And I think this, to go along with what Chairman McCartney said, this is the history of the past year in regard to initial unemployment claims. And so we finally crossed the 1 million mark at the beginning of March. For over 1 million people have filed an unemployment claim in the state of Alabama since March 21st. Now, not all these people obviously are still unemployed. In fact, we're doing a great job of getting people back to work compared to a lot of other states, and that's why our unemployment rate continues to go down. But from a workforce perspective, I think we continue to have to keep in mind that this is a third opportunity population when we take into account our talent development system. So we've got our traditional high school, community college, university pipeline, and of course the folks that are not in the labor force that we're continuing to focus on. But for the next year, we've all got to be very intentional about this group of folks that for the first time may have had their economic and professional lives disrupted. They could be going back to work, but in a job that's different than the job that they were in before. And next month, we're going to be showing the results from a second survey that we did with Signal that's going to get into childcare, transportation, housing, and some of the barriers that people are telling us that they're facing right now, and also what they're looking for. So this is a follow-up from our initial survey of the underemployed and unemployed. And we told you when that came out, we're going to get more granular into the barriers. So we've got those results and we're reviewing those now. We're going to be sharing that with you next month. But so even though this trend line is trending down, and another thing you could look at is that it'll be interesting to see what happens when we institute the new unemployment extensions and PUA. And so we will see whether this trend line goes up or down. So a lot to still unpack as we get the UPLs and what they call unemployment insurance program letters from USDOL to see how these programs will impact us. But certainly what we want to make sure that we're doing is having people re-enter the workforce and to not remain unemployed. And so with all of the new government programs, some of them not as well understood as and have not been studied. A lot of these are new programs. We're going to have to try even harder as a state to make sure that we are doing what we've got to do to get folks back into the workforce. And that's on us, obviously, but some of it could be more challenging in the face of all these different new programs. And not that anybody is going to want to necessarily stay on one of these just because it's there. So I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is because these are new, because they haven't been studied, we're going to have to do more to show the pathway back into an in-demand job. And so that's what the focus of the rest of what I'm going to be talking with you about in the next few minutes is about. So we did in the past 2 weeks win a grant through NGA to fund the Skills-Based Recovery Initiative. And the Skills-Based Recovery Initiative is going to be focused on those, and I left you off that list. You're supposed to be on the state team, Mr. Chairman. So sorry about that. So you're on the state team. But through this project, we're going to be focused intentionally on those million people who maybe even be back to work, but not in a job that leads to self-sufficiency or the job that leads to the destination occupation that they want to enter. And we're going to be talking about how do we really focus on doing a gap analysis of our public workforce system. How do we know if we've got the programs on our eligible training provider list that will lead somebody to employment in the jobs that we know that are in demand and the jobs that we know that are resilient? And our jobs in healthcare, IT, construction, manufacturing have all been fairly resilient, and transportation throughout the pandemic. And so the problem is that we've got a gap between what the jobs that are available and the pathways to get somebody from where they are into those jobs. And I think we all know that anecdotally, and we're going to show it empirically, that there is not enough of the right programs available to prepare people for the jobs that are in demand. And if there are, then we can declare victory and move on. But I think we all know that there's not. And so the next step is then figuring out how do we ensure that those jobs can articulate, or those programs rather, the non-degree and short-term programs are articulatable to a long-term certificate or degree, so that we're not just training somebody in a short-term 6 to 8 week program and saying, here you go, and that's it. It's got to be more than that. And that's what people want too. That's what they need. Long-term labor market value, but the short-term training for occupation-specific skills coupled with the general skills that everybody from Georgetown, Dr. Carnevale, and all the research shows that. Plus, I think all of us know that from our own personal experience and just looking around the world, that people do need both short-term occupation-specific skills and the general skills that give long-term labor market value. And so we're going to be taking advantage of the work that we've already done through the ACCCP by developing our occupational ontology and credential engine that takes the DNA of a job, so that we're in the position moving forward for employers, for y'all to tell us in government, here's the DNA and the recipe for the job, and then we put together a customized training program for that job, rather than putting together a training program and saying, do you like this program? Will that work for you? We know that's not the right way to do it. But when we're developing all these customized and bespoke programs, we can't just be producing a bunch of unicorns. These also have to fit into the regular public workforce system and education system. So that's our goal moving forward. And we're going to be focused on this through really July. And the product is going to be the training that's required to take advantage of the skills-based job description generator that Cody went over. And we're going to be giving you more information about that, and the credential engine that you've heard Dr. McGill from AIC talk about before. And so it's not enough for us just to produce those tools. We've got to really get the word out about them, and then show the return on investment and why it makes sense to use those, about how it's going to save money on the HR process, and about how it's going to make people have a more transparent, less scary, less hook and crook by luck pathway into an in-demand job. And then I think it'll start making sense. But right now, it's still pretty esoteric to folks. And so what we're going to be doing through these next 6 months is trying to make it clear. And then I want to close, Mr. Chairman, by saying that we want to put a plug out for our 2021 Alabama Interstate Talent Development Convening. This is the first time we've done something like this, so we're really excited about it, because what we're doing is not waiting for the federal government to get us together as states, and we're not doing it through the prism of one particular organization, who they're all great, but you know, everybody's got their plan or what they're trying to get out of it. What this is a group of states that are coming together as peers with a particular goal in mind of coming up with some consensus objectives for us to put into the WIOA and Higher Education Act reauthorization, and for us to keep meeting together as peers over the next several months to reach that consensus. And again, this is the states doing the work directly with each other. And of course, all of our partners and different nonprofits and such that we work with are involved, but this is state led. And so Governor Ivey is going to be getting it kicked off. Mr. Jamie Marasotis, who is the CEO of Lumina Foundation, is going to be keynoting. And we're going to have about 16 to 18 breakout sessions that are designed to give everybody a full spectrum picture of what it would take to have an integrated workforce education human service system. And everybody gets to choose two that they want to attend during the day. But the idea is that they'll have the rest of those that they can go back and look. And not every state's going to do all the different things that we're doing in the same way we're doing it. And so the idea is that they can choose from those that are most salient to them. So that's the plan. Please get the word out for us. We're, I think, over nearly 300 registrations right now, and about 13 or 14 states involved so far. So we want to get it up over 1,000 registrations and have most, if not all, of the states represented. So thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dick. Appreciate that update. And I'm looking forward to that on the 5th of April. I know I'm going to be involved on a panel with Mr. Marasotis, so I'm looking forward to that. So everybody help us get the word out. That's exciting to hear. We can have over 1,000 attendees, and hope we do that. Nick, one other question, and this is probably unfair because we didn't talk about this before, but since we've got the vaccines out there, you got any update that you can share with us about how the vaccine has been penetrated in Alabama, how many we've got vaccinated so far, and where we are on that? Like I say, that's an unfair question. You're not the public health guy, but you might have some help for us.
Yeah, no, the governor on Thursday, I think it was Thursday, it might have been Friday, announced the next phase of vaccinations to where we're going to do 55 and up. And so I know that they're working closely with the administration to get it to where it's available to all adults by the end of the spring. And so I don't know exactly how many have been vaccinated. I'll find that and get it to you. But I do know that they're steadily moving down the schedule and add more and more age groups, and 55 and up, along with a bunch of other essential occupational categories were added in there as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope all of y'all get vaccinated. I will be in that next group. They've hit my age group now, so I'll be getting that soon. So we got to get everybody out there where we get back to work full time without the concern about catching the COVID. So, well, thanks again for all of our speakers today. Dean Mitchell, Cody Easley, Tammy Wilkinson, and Fee Friend, and of course my co-host as always, Nick Moore. Look forward to our next month's meeting. Nick, what's the date of that? I should have that in front of me.
So for the April webinar, it's going to be April 19th, 9 o'clock.
Great. Well, we look for all of y'all to be on then. And in the meantime, if you have questions, send me the questions, or Nick Moore, or any of the panelists here today. Thanks again. Y'all be safe and enjoy